Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido and today it is the Kitakami Rogues going up against the Olivine Raiders, and as they pull out their starting hands and have a quick look through them, let's have a look at this tale of the tape, as this is the first time ever the Rogues and the Raiders have collided, as this is the Raiders' debut season in the PokeType League TCG, but that will not stop the Rogues from wanting to give them a very dark welcoming as they look to get their first win of the season. But with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Darkness decks? Will it be the Metal decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And going first, it is going to be that Eternal Time deck of the Olivine Raiders, and they are going to put the Bronzor into the active spot. They've got the Dialga in hand, but they're going to keep it there as the Rogues with their Galactic Admin deck put the Skorupi into the active spot. But here we go, game one in our best of 3 series, and it is the Giant Cape being pulled for the Raiders, but they've got this Professor's Research, they've got the 2 Bronzongs in hand as well, but they get the Rocky Helmet and the Armor Fossil thanks to the Professor's Research, and they still have that Dialga in hand who they can put onto the bench if they choose to do so. They are going to move the Armor Fossil as they're hoping that they can get Shieldon and Bastiodon out of their deck. They're still contemplating though whether or not they want to move the Dialga, and they finally decide that is the decision they want to make, sending it over to the Rogues who pulled the Toxicroak, but they don't have any other basic Pokemon in their hand at the moment. They've got the Skuntank, they've got their Rocky Helmet and Giant Cape, plus that Team Rocket Admins. Or sorry, Team Rocket Grunts. It's the Galactic Admin deck though that we are playing here. As the second Professor's Research has been pulled for the Raiders, they are going to thin this deck even more. They get the Bastiodon, they get the Iono, but they still do not have the Shieldon, and that is what they need for that Armor Fossil, as they can get a first energy onto the Bronzor, but it does require 2 to go on the offensive, and already they've only got 9 cards left in that deck. Now, having a look at their Bronzongs here, one with the Psychic, one with the Guard Press. The Psychic capitalizes on the opposing the energy on the opposing Pokemon. The Guard Press reduces incoming damage. As they put the Rocky Helmet onto the Bronzor, they send it back over to the Rogues who pull the Drapion. It does require 3 energy for that Cross Poison, where it can do 40 damage for each heads of a 4-coin flip. But it requires 3 energy, and they've just gotten the second energy on to the Drapion as well, and they're going to put the Giant Cape on top of it. With that Cross Poison as well, if 2 of those coin flips out of the 4 are heads, the opposing Pokemon is left poisoned. And that's a big threat of this Galactic Admin deck as they look to poison the opposing Pokemon. The Shieldon though has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders. This is fantastic for them as they're looking through their hand. That Shieldon is online, but do they want to get one of these Bronzongs online as well? And they do. It will be the Psychic variant though, and it's the Psychic damage, not the type, where it does do 50 damage, but it still requires another energy after just having that second energy placed onto it. So they are going to send it back over to the Rogues. Now this Drapion, if it can get 3 heads, it will take out this Bronzong, but first they play the Professor's Research they just pulled. They get a second Team Rocket Grunt, and they get the Stunky, and they've got the Skuntank in hand, so they immediately move the Stunky onto the bench. Now, having a look at that Skuntank, who also can poison the opposing Pokemon, but there's the third energy onto the Drapion. 4 coin flips, they need at least 3 heads to take out this Bronzong. A Tails, 1 heads, another Tails, and another head, sorry. So it's 2 and 2, the Cross Poison, 80 damage onto the Bronzong, but it will leave it poisoned. With the Rocky Helmet, it does do that 20 damage in return, but the poisoning does an additional 10 to the Bronzong. They have pulled the X-Speed, that being the Olivine Raiders, as they need to think about how they want to approach this. They can do 110 damage to the Drapion here, but it won't be enough to take it out. It still has 120 health remaining. They get the Bastiodon online, who does require 3 energy as well, but it's that Guarded Grill where when it takes damage, it's a coin flip, and if it flips a heads, it does negative 100 damage. So Pokemon need to do at least 100 damage to ensure that they get something onto this Bastiodon, or 110 for that matter, as the Psychic is going to do 110, as we just mentioned, to the Drapion, leaving it with 10 health remaining, and that Bastiodon also just had the Giant Cape put on it, getting an additional 20 damage. The second Toxicroak being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, and here it is, the Skuntank now online. This Drapion can take out the Bronzong right here, right now, but with that Rocky Helmet, it will be eliminated. So first, they're going to play the Team Rocket Grunt. If they can get 2, Bronzong won't be able to do any damage. They get 1. They only get one though, that Tails preventing the continuation of those coin flips. And Stunky's going to get its first energy here, as they do have that Rocky helmet that they can put onto it. I mean, Skuntank, sorry, not a Stunky, it has been evolved, and they're really thinking about whether or not they want to, but they finally decided to move that Rocky helmet onto the Skuntank. They could retreat the Drapion, but it is a 3 energy retreat cost, or they can go for maximum damage, and that is exactly what they're doing. They're going for the coin flips. Let's see how they go. They get a heads, they get 2, 3, they get all for 160 damage. They only needed 1, but they get 160. Talk about maximizing the damage. However, with that Rocky helmet recoil damage, it is 1 point to each side, as the Drapion has been taken down alongside the Bronzong, so no one is clearly in front at the moment, as the Bastiodon will be selected by the Raiders. The Skuntank, the only option for the Rogues. It's the second Bastiodon now being pulled for the Raiders. They've also still got that Iono in hand as well if they want to switch out their current hand. And that is exactly what they do, so they'll shuffle their 3 cards, the Rogues have to shuffle their 3 as well, and they get the same amount back in return. It's a Bronzor, a Bronzong, and an Adamant for the Raiders. It's a Toxicroak, a Stunky, and a Pokeball for the Rogues. That Bronzor going onto the bench for the Raiders. There's not much else they can do, so they send it over to the Rogues, who pull the Toxicroak once again, and that is that group beatdown Toxicroak, who does 40 damage each a coin flip, but it's for every Pokemon that's active for the Rogues, so they would need a full bench for 4 possible coin flips. As they get the Stunky and the Croagunk onto the bench, they do have that second Drapion in hand, but here's the Poison Gas as well. They need the coin flip, they need a Tails from the Raiders, and that is exactly what they get. So that Poison Gas does 50 damage, but also leaves Bastiodon with that poison status condition to contend with. The second Shieldon has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders. That Bronzong can be put onto the Bronzor, as there is that second energy going onto the Bastiodon, and they're going to play the Adamant just in case they're unable to flip their heads on the next one. That will reduce damage taken by Bastiodon by 20. And they're thinking about moving the Bronzong onto the Bronzor, but decide against it. There's 10 damage taken from Bastiodon as the Rogues pull the Team Rocket Grunt. The Team Galactic Grunt, sorry. They've been using those Team Rocket Grunts, but I believe they've already got all the base. No, they've got that second Croagunk. I take that back. The second Croagunk is now in hand, but they can go for this group beatdown with the Toxicroak, who's just been brought online, but does require 2 energy to do so. So they're going to get one of those required 2 onto it, as this Poison Gas. They need a Tails from the Raiders, and this time they do get their heads, so they don't take any damage from this Poison Gas. Fortunately for Bastiodon, who is running out of time, it's down to 100 health thanks to that poisoning. The second Armor Fossil now being pulled for the Raiders, but Bastiodon can now start going on the offensive. However, there is that Rocky Helmet on the Skuntank. The Headbang, 80 damage onto the Skuntank, but there is that 20 recoil. Skuntank only having 20 health remaining. Bastiodon with 70, it's the second Toxicroak being pulled for the Rogues that has that Toxic, only requires 1 energy, but it badly poisons the opposing Pokemon, so instead of them losing 10 damage between turns, it's 20. And they are going to go with the Toxicroak getting that second energy. They can go for another Poison Gas, but instead they're going to try and take down this Bastiodon right now with the group beatdown. They need to flip these heads. They get a Tails, 2 Tails, 3 Tails, they get 1 heads. The Raiders though, if they flip their heads here, they will mute that damage. Unfortunately, they do get the Tails, which means that group beatdown does do 40 damage to the Bastiodon. With the additional 10, it has 20 health remaining. The second Bastiodon has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders. They immediately get that Shieldon onto the Armor Fossil, and they're going to start preparing that Shieldon, and they move the Bronzong onto the Bronzor. These hands are almost empty for these 2 sides, as they can go for another Headbang. It will bring Toxicroak down to 10 health remaining, but also with 10 health remaining is the Bastiodon, another Team Galactic Grunt, but I think all the basic Pokemon are out of the deck for the Rogues. They are still going to play it. Oh no, they're not. They have 3 cards remaining in that deck. They might as well try it, thinning the deck a little bit quicker, but again, there are no basic Pokemon left there. And they get another energy onto the Skuntank as well. It is the most powerful Pokemon they have on the board outside of that Toxicroak, who only has 10 health remaining. And it can go for another group beatdown. If it doesn't, oh no, they're going for the retreat instead, moving that full strength Toxicroak into the active spot. They don't want the alternative Toxicroak to be taken down. They let the poisoning take Bastiodon out of this match. And the Raiders now are going to move that Shieldon into the active spot. They've just pulled their Pokeball, but they can get this Bastiodon online. First using the Pokeball, they get that second Dialga. They are going to get a second energy onto the Shieldon. It can do 50 damage. It is quite powerful. And this is actually really intelligent, not evolving it into Bastiodon yet. They've just halved the health of Toxicroak. But once it evolves, it will lose that poisoning. As they do go for the Team Rocket Grunt, do the Rogues. They need to get these energies off the Shieldon. They get one, they get two, they get both energies off the Shieldon, which means Bastiodon will have to be set up from the very start. They get that one required energy onto the Toxicroak that is going to badly poison this Shieldon. Now we see it's going to do the additional damage. It does 20 in total, as the X-Speed has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders, who actually have their backs up against the wall at the moment. They've only taken 1 point in this game. The Rogues have taken 2, but here's the second Bastiodon coming online. And it gets its first energy back after the Team Rocket Grunts took down the 2 that it had. It would have been able to take down this Toxicroak otherwise, as the second Skuntank has been pulled for the Rogues. And the Rogues are left thinking how they want to approach this. They're going to get an energy back onto that bench Toxicroak. They go for the Toxic once again, so now Bastiodon will be left with this bad poisoning, doing that 20 damage. And there's no more cards for the Raiders to pull, so they get a second energy onto the Bastiodon. There's not much else they can do with it at the moment. It even requires 4 energy for it to retreat. Losing the 20 health, it comes back over to the Rogues, who pull the Draco. They've got the Scroopy in hand, but they've got no more cards to pull either. This is one of the longest games we've seen in the PokeType League TCG, but they're going to try and go for the win. They retreat their Toxicroak that does the Toxic. They're going for the group beatdown. They need at least 3. They get a Tails, they get a Heads, they get a Tails, they get 2 Heads here. They need the Raiders to flip a Tails, and it is a Tails from the Raiders, so they will get that 80 damage onto the Bastiodon, but the poisoning is going to finish off a second Bastiodon, and the Rogues have taken game 1 with this Galactic Admin deck over the Eternal Time deck. Now, as we go into game 2, it is the Rogues flipping ahead, and they are going to be using their Galactic Boss deck. They've got the Murkrow, the Poochyena, and the Mightyena in hand, Rocky Helmet, and the Professor's Research, with the Poochyena going in the active spot, the Murkrow going on the bench. The Raiders have their Stark Mountain deck with only the Heatran as a basic Pokemon, but they've got that Pokeball that could be crucial. They've got a Magneton in hand as well, and regardless of the outcome of this matchup, we will go to our third game because it still counts towards the leaderboard with the points that get taken and the damage that gets done. The Rogues, playing their Professor's Research, get a second Honchcraft after just pulling one, and they get the Giant Cape as well. There's not much else they can do unless they wanted to set up their Pokemon. The Raiders pull their own Giant Cape, they've got their own Rocky Helmet, and they've got that Pokemon communication as they play the Pokeball. They get the Magnemite. That's fantastic. With the Magneton already in hand, they move that Magnemite onto the bench, and the Heatran is going to get its first of 3 required energy. It can do 110 damage with that Steel Tackle, but it does do 20 damage to itself as the Rogues pull their Zubat. They get a first energy onto the Poochyena. They can evolve it. They are going to evolve the Murkrow into the Honchcrow, but the Mightyena does require 2 energy, so the Poochyena they leave to just bite away at this Heatran. Coming back over to the Olivine Raiders, and they've pulled the Magnezone already as well. The Magneton's now online, the Rocky Helmet going onto the Heatran. You have to think they're going to move that Giant Cape onto the Magneton, and Magnezone is ready and waiting in hand. Unfortunately, it cannot capitalize on that Resilience Link because there are no EX cards, and it needs the Arceus EX to be able to maximize that. Can't remember, and I can't quite see if it requires just a regular Arceus, but it is not on the side of the Olivine Raiders. It is a member of the Petalburg Razors. And the Golbat being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues after Heatran just got its second energy. Poochyena getting its second energy as well though, so they can get this Mightyena online. It has 90 health. It cannot outlast a hit from the Heatran. They're looking at their Rocky Helmet. They may want to use that just to try and cause Heatran to take itself out of this game, and they do. They are moving that Rocky Helmet very slowly, might I add, to that Mightyena. They just wanted to make sure they were making the right call. And with this Darkness Fang, it can do 60 damage to the Heatran. It will get 20 recoil damage from the Rocky Helmet that the Heatran is wearing, but Heatran only has 10 health of its own remaining at this point. And the Raiders now pulling their own Professor's Research. They are going to thin their deck by 2 more cards. They get the Lumberry, they get the Potion. This is the only deck in this season, Season A2 of the PokeType League TCG, that has a Lumberry. They've got those Skarmories who benefit from the Pokemon tools greatly, as they do restore a bit of health for the Heatran. They get the Magnezone online, and they get that 3rd energy required for the Heatran, so it can go for this Steel Tackle. This means it will be able to outlast this Mightyena being taken down as the Raiders take 0.1. There's that Rocky Helmet doing 20 damage back to the Heatran after the Steel Tackle also did the 20 recoil damage. It's got 20 health remaining. The Rogues moving their Golbat into the active spot, and the entire Crobat line only requires 1 energy in this Galactic Boss deck. As the Pokeball has been pulled for the Rogues, they're going to get another basic Pokemon. They get another Murkrow, which is fantastic because they do have the Honchkrow already in hand. And Golbat with this bite is immediately going to level the playing field, taking Heatran off the table. But again, that Rocky Helmet coming into play, Golbat taking 20 damage in return for its efforts. But still, no one has the advantage here in Game 2, as the Rogues are looking to lock this series up in this second game, whereas the Raiders want to extend it to a Game 3 if they can get this Stark Mountain deck to win. They play the Adamant that they just pulled, so this will reduce the damage that Magnezone takes in the coming turn by 20, as it gets its first of 3 required energy for this Power Beam that does 80 damage. And Crobat has now been pulled for the Rogues. They move the Honchkrow onto the Murkrow, so they've got 2 Honchkrows on the bench. The Darkness Fang of the Crobat that's now online does 50 damage, and it doesn't actually require any more energy, so they can start setting up these Honchkrows. The Darkness Fang will only do 30 on this occasion thanks to the Adamant reducing the damage, so Magnezone still has 130 health remaining. And here is the Skarmory being pulled for the Olivine Raiders. It only requires 1 energy, but if it has a tool, that metal, I can't quite read what that says actually, but that move does an extra 30 damage. It does 20. If they have a tool, they do an extra 30. And there's that 3rd energy onto the Magnezone, as the second Zubat has been pulled for the Kitakami Rogues, and the Honchkrow without an energy now has one, so they're both set up ready to take an energy on the coming turns. 50 damage being done to the Magnezone. And it is the Pokemon Center Lady being pulled for the Olivine Raiders. They're able to restore 30 health for the Magnezone, taking it back up to 110. And they finally get that 3rd energy, this Power Beam. 80 damage will not be enough to take out the Crobat. And it is the second Mightyena being pulled for the Kitakami Rogues. And there is a 2nd energy onto one of these Honchkrows. Now Crobat has a 0 retreat cost, so they can just move Honchkrow right there into the active spot, and with this skill dive it can target either the Skarmory or the Magnezone, and they want this Magnezone off the board with the amount of power it can generate. Coming back over to the Olivine Raiders, they pull the 2nd Heatran. They've still got that Pokemon communication in hand as well, and they are going to move the Heatran onto the bench, and they're going to start setting that up as well. It does require 3 energy like the previous one, but the Power Beam 80 damage onto the Honchkrow still has 20 health remaining. It has a 2 energy retreat cost. Now that 2nd Crobat has been pulled, they still need the 2nd Golbat though. And the Kitakami Rogues don't want to drop a single point by the looks of it, because they're thinking of retreating this Honchkrow. They're almost going on the offensive without attaching an energy as well, but they're not going to move that Zubat into the active spot. They are going to go for the skill dive with the Honchkrow. Magnezone will have 10 health remaining. It will outlast this Honchkrow, which frees up Magnezone to take it down. The 2nd Magneton has been pulled. There's no Magnemite in hand, but a 2nd energy is on that Heatran, the Power Beam, taking Honchkrow off the board. The alternative Honchkrow would have been able to outlast that. It was a hard decision to make for the Rogues. They may have just made the wrong one, as the Raiders get their 2nd point. The 2nd Honchkrow coming online now, and it's the Poochyena being pulled for the Rogues. They've got the Giant Cape. They are going to put this onto the Honchkrow. It can outlast the hit from Heatran, but it is not strong enough to take Heatran out. The Zubat's now on the bench. The Poochyena is now on the bench. They've got the Mightyena and the Crobat in hand. And they're thinking of putting an energy onto the Zubat, but the Zubat only requires 1 across its whole line, whereas the Mightyena requires 2. They're limiting their options here. The Skill Dive, they can take out this Magnezone. And that they do, so they level the playing field 2 points each. The next point will win game 3, but the Raiders have that Heatran ready to go. They may be in control here. They do move the Heatran into the active spot. They pull the second Magnezone. They still don't have the second Magnemite though, but they do have a third energy for this Heatran. This Steel Tackle, 110 damage. Honchkrow will hold on though with 10 health remaining. And they do pull the Professor's Research, that being the Rogues. They immediately play that, so they're going to get another 2 cards out of this deck. They get the Cyrus, but there's no benched Pokemon with damage on it. They get the Golbat as well, so that Zubat is now evolved into a Golbat, but it's not strong enough to outlast the Heatran. The Mightyena's online, it's not strong enough to outlast the Heatran either. The Rogues are limited, there is only so much they can do right now. And they are thinking about this, about how they may want to approach this. I think they realize what is happening, and that is that this will be going to a game 3. They drop an energy onto the Mightyena. They can go for this Skill Dive. They can do 50 damage to either Heatran or Skarmory, and they choose the Heatran, but this frees up Heatran to absolutely wipe this Honchkrow off the board. They get the potion. I don't think they're worried about that. They're worried about this Steel Tackle and taking this to a game 3, because they have taken Honchkrow, taken their 3rd point, and taken the win. We will be going to a game 3 to determine the winner of this series. And here we go, our 3rd and final game with the Kitakami Rogues flipping heads. They are going first with this Endless Nightmare deck, and we can see the Darkrai and the Ekans in hand. They've also got an Arbok and 2 Cyrus, whereas the Olivine Raiders with this Mining Melancholy deck, they've got the Registeel and what looks like a Varoom, as well as a Pokeball, a Dawn, and a Potion in hand. The Ekans in the active spot for the Rogues, the Darkrai on the bench, the Varoom in the active spot for the Olivine Raiders. And here we go, our 3rd game, our decider of this series, as the Olivine Raiders look to ensure that they do not lose this series. They did not lose one in round 1, so they are undefeated here in the PokeType League TCG, as the Spiritomb is put on the bench that the Rogues just pulled, and the Pokeball being played by the Olivine Raiders. After pulling the XP, they get a second Registeel in hand. It requires 3 energy for that Metal Claw to do 90 damage, but the Varoom only requires 1 energy for this Headbutt, which it does 10 damage. Just a little bit of chip damage to this Ekans, bringing it down to 60 health as it comes back over to the Rogues, who pull the Shroudle. Now, Ekans does require 2 energy as it gets its first here. That Ram does 30 damage. And they send it back over to the Raiders. They pull their Mawile, and they do have that Iron Beam Breaker. It does more damage to opposing Steel Pokemon, which unfortunately is not going to be useful unless they're up against the Holon Allies and that Gold Rush deck. So they're going to start setting up this Registeel as the Varoom continues to just do 10 damage with these Headbutts to the Ekans, as it comes back over to the Rogues, who pull their second Arbok. And they are going to get a second energy onto the Ekans, and the reason they haven't evolved it yet into the Arbok is because it requires 3 energy. But now they're thinking about it with this Venomous Fang, they do move it onto the Ekans. So Arbok is now online with 90 health remaining, as the Olivine Raiders pull the Adamant. They can reduce the damage that Varoom takes in the coming turn by 20, which means it can outlast a hit here from the Arbok, but the Arbok will also poison Varoom. And there it is, that Adamant being played. They get a second energy onto the Registeel, and another Headbutt from the Varoom, continuing to chip away at this Arbok. And the Rogues have pulled the Grafaiai, so they immediately move the Shroudle onto the bench in preparation for that. But first, the Venomous Fang doing 70 damage with the negative 20, thanks to the Adamant only doing 50, but the Poisoning does the additional 10. Varoom has 1 turn left in it, as the Mars has been pulled for the Olivine Raiders. And Mars does cause the opposing team to shuffle their hand into their deck and pull the matching amount as points they have. I probably said that really badly, but if they have 3 points remaining to get, they pull 3 cards. So if they only have 1, they only pull 1 card. So it can be a very important supporter, but they are going to use the X speed to retreat the room for free. They don't want to drop any points. They're going to play an energy onto the Registeel, and with this Metal Claw, the Olivine Raiders are going to take the first point here in Game 3, taking Arbok off the board. Now the Rogues left to decide how they want to approach this. They were unsuccessful in round 1. They want to get their first win of the season. They move Spiritomb into the active spot as they pull their second Spiritomb as well. They've got the Grafaiai that can poison the opposing active Pokemon with that poison coating. They do require a head flip as well, but they've got the Cyrus in hand, so they can actually drag that Revelry back into the active spot, but clearly they're more concerned with the Registeel at the moment. And they flip the heads. Registeel will be left with that poison status condition, and the Confuse Ray can also confuse the Registeel, which could prevent it from being able to do damage as well. They get a first and only required energy to go for the Confuse Ray, and here we go, the Confuse Ray doing 20 damage to the Registeel, but it is this coin flip. They need another heads, and they unfortunately get a tail, so Registeel will be free to go on the offensive. The Raiders have also pulled their second Adamant card, who they are immediately going to play, wanting to reduce the damage that Registeel takes by 20, and they move that second Registeel onto the bench, getting a first energy onto that, as well as the Metal Claw is going to take Spiritomb off the board, and already the Olivine Raiders have their second point. One more and they will win this series over the Kitakami Rogues, who started impressively strong with that Galactic admin deck. It is the Darkrai being moved into the active spot. It can outlast a hit from the Registeel, but they've also just pulled the Team Rocket Grunts. They can get the energies off of this Registeel as well. It will stop as soon as they flip a tails. They get one heads. They only get one though, so it's one energy being taken off of the Registeel, and it's already poisoned as they move that Spiritomb onto the bench. And Darkrai does require 3 energy, as they're left to think about how they want to approach this. They've still got those Cyrus in hand, but not able to play that after having already used the supporter on this turn. It comes back over to the Raiders, who just pull their Rocky Helmet. They get a second energy onto that benched Registeel, but that means they can't go on the offensive with their active Registeel. They may have just acted too fast, however they've got the Dawn in hand that allows them to move an energy from their benched Pokemon. Unless they're thinking of retreating that Registeel to keep it safe, they've still yet to drop a point here in Game 3. They may be aiming to not drop any points, but instead they do play the Dawn, so they're opting to move an energy to that active Registeel. They could have gotten an energy off of that benched Varoom instead, but there it is, 90 damage onto the Darkrai here, who has 20 health remaining. It requires 3 energy. They are very limited, are the Kitakami Rogues right now. Do get a second energy onto the Darkrai. They're thinking about how they can approach this. I'm not sure there is much they can do unless they want to pull the room into the active spot. It does only do 10 damage, but they move that second Darkrai onto the bench, and they're going to switch the Darkrai as they've moved the full strength Darkrai into the active spot, but it still does not have enough energy to go on the offensive like they need it to. They can use a supporter, but instead they're going to leave this Registeel in the active spot, sending it back over to the Raiders, who have just pulled their Revelry, who has that spinning drift. It requires 3 energy as well, does 70 damage. They get a second energy onto that benched Registeel. Once again, that Metal Claw continues onto this newly refreshed active Darkrai, also being brought down to 20 health. Registeel has 30 health remaining. The Rogues pulling the Rocky Helmet, and they are going to put that onto the Darkrai in their active spot. This may be the only way they get a point here in Game 3, is if Registeel is taken out by the recoil damage. And with that, there's 10 more health gone from Registeel. The second Revelry being pulled for the Olivine Raiders. They are going to retreat the active Registeel, moving that benched Registeel into the active spot. It gets its third energy, and they do not have to worry about dropping a point in Game 3, because this Metal Claw is going to take Darkrai off the board, and the Olivine Raiders have started their debut season perfectly by not dropping a series yet. They are 2-0 in the PokeType League TCG, and this is fantastic for them as they stay in 3rd place, and next round they are going up against the Holon Allies, whereas for the Rogues they unfortunately stay on the bottom of the leaderboard, and next round they are going up against the Pastoria Hydros. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what you thought the best card was, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I will see you when you see me.